To hold the competition, you will need a bucket with 9 holes placed according to the rules, a 5.5 meters long rope with 2 red flags sewn to the rope on a distance of 3 and 5 meters away from the bucket. Sew the flags tight, since the crew member lowers the rope through his hand. A handle should be attached exactly 20 cm above the upper red flag. Bicycle grips can be handy when making a hand. Now let's move to the gates. The poles are 2 meters high and 1 meter apart from each other. For classic competition, you will also need arrows. Mount them on the ground so that they don't get blown away. These are the tables required to hold the competition. 1 meter in diameter for classic competition and 30 centimeters in diameter for heli races. You will also need a barrel of water and cans to refill it during the competition. A plastic or metal ruler to measure the water level in the bucket, and a rag to wipe the table dry. In this part of the video, I'll try my best to explain you how to judge. In the beginning, an assistant judge brings the bucket to the helicopter. When all of the judges are ready, the starter raises the flags to the horizontal level and waits for the signal from the crews. The crew member raises his hand when the crew is ready. When both crews are ready, the starter gives the go-ahead signal. In heli race, the time starts at the moment the flags go down. In classic competition, the time starts when the bucket crosses the line D. When the helicopter approaches the barrel, the judge makes sure that the crew member holds the rope above the first red flag. The crew member must be seated, harnessed, and his both hands must be visible. Lifting the bucket from the barrel, the crew member takes the rope by the handle over the second red flag. To correctly pass the gate, the top of the bucket must pass below the top of the poles. The judge should take a position where he can clearly see both poles of the gate and the gap between them. Otherwise, it's not possible to determine whether the bucket has passed between the poles or not. This position is wrong. The judge can't see both poles clearly. This method of passing the gates is not allowed. To pass the backward gate correctly, the crew member must firstly carry the bucket around the outside of the poles and then in between of them. If the bucket missed the gate, it must be taken back around the outside of the poles before another attempt is made. In heli races, repeated attempts to pass the gate are not allowed. And since the judges in heli races don't have no score sheets, if they see a violation, they just raise their flag immediately. Hitting the ground with your bucket is considered to be a violation of the rules only in heli races. Touching the poles is not penalized, but the water splash prevents you from seeing whether the bucket has passed between the poles. Judges need to be very careful. If the rope is caught on the ski or a chassis, the judge must show a black flag. In classic competition, the bucket must be placed on the table in one attempt. Every extra attempt to place the bucket will be penalized. So the judge must count how many times the bucket touches the table surface before the rope was dropped. Touching the end of the table or its legs is not an infringement. If the bucket is dragged on the table without separation, there is no penalty. In this case, the bucket stays in touch with the table the whole time, so there is no penalty. The time watches should be stopped when the crew member releases the rope. The arithmetic mean time from 2 stopwatches will be recorded. Judges measure the accuracy of placing the bucket and the level of remaining water. The assistant judge removes the bucket and wipes the table dry. This is how to measure the accuracy of bucket's placement. In this case, the miss was 3.1 cm, making it 3.1 penalties. In this case, the ruler connects the center of the table with the closest point of the bucket. The distance from the buckets to the circles 0 is measured. Here we measure the distance from the buckets to the circles 0, passing through the center of the table. To measure the water level in classic competitions, you need to measure the distance between the water surface and the lower edge of the holes. In this case, it's 3 centimeters of water lacking. The crew will get 3 penalty points. In heli races, repeated table touches are not penalized, and the accuracy of the bucket's placement is not measured. If the remaining water level is less than 9 cm, the crew will get 10 penalty points. In heli races, the water level is measured from the bottom of the bucket. To avoid a mistake, you can put a red mark on the ruler at 9 cm. If the water reaches the red line, there is no penalty. In heli races, like in classic competition, the arithmetic mean time from all stopwatches will be calculated and documented. The flight time of every competitor is immediately shown to the judges, crews, and spectators. Now, as always, some safety rules for judges. First of all, you obviously shouldn't stay on the field with flying buckets filled with water without a hard hat on you. A visibility jacket is also very helpful if you want to stay alive. When a helicopter approaches the table, the judges must be at the maximum distance from it. Do not approach the table until the helicopter has left the area. In heli races, after completing the flight, the helicopter always returns to the line D. Therefore, there must be no judges and no equipment at line D. You can only bring the bucket when the helicopter has landed completely. Approach the helicopter from its front or side, being in the pilot's side. In heli races, competitors greet each other after their flights. The judges should remember this to avoid finding themselves under the helicopter. The airstream there is blowing away and it doesn't smell good.